nature presents an established set of processes and achievements, billions of years old, which exercise a moral claim on rational intelligence, if it will but notice. And so that's what this is all about. It's about Aboriginal values and Aboriginal technologies, psychedelic drugs, shamanism, what have you, offering to us in the final moments of our unravelment a different and better way to carry on, a different and better way to behave and build a world. And it doesn't come a moment too soon. It may come too late. The ultimate tragedy. Imagine if we, in this ultimate kind of thanatoptic struggle, actually got it right, only to understand that the momentum of our own idiocy was so great that you would die knowing you could have done it right, but you would die anyway. And I mean as a culture, as a planet. So it's a call to awakening. Can cultural values be saved? I don't think so. I don't give a hoot. I mean, I'm an egg smasher. I mean, I think we should save the Rembrandts and save, the Piera della De Francescas and all that. But we cannot save the values. Racism, sexism, homophobia, xenophobia, product fetishism, enormous pyramids of class and privilege. None of this is savable. None of it is worth saving. Science is worth saving. It's worth reforming because it is, as a method, powerful. But in the presence of people contaminated by these other values, it becomes an engine of madness, of consumer fetishism, of propagandizing, of the waging of war on unimaginable scales. Religion, as we have practiced it, I don't think can be saved, because what religion has given us are laundry lists of moral do's and don'ts that are preposterous on the face of them. I mean, if the people who preceded us believed all that, then this world is the consequence of those beliefs. And this is hell. This is hell. So, if there's a message here, rather than just a rant, I think it would be to return to nature. Observe. Open your eyes. Get smart. Culture is not your friend. Religion is not your friend. The values of these cultures are fatal. And if we don't wrench the direction of human society into an entirely new way of doing things, the clock is ticking. Nature is unforgiving. Intelligence is a grand experiment. But if it does not serve novelty and diversity and the production of love and community and true caring, who needs it? Who needs it? Better to have a universe that glorifies God through its diversity than a universe which is the travesty of a demonic intent. And if you are not a psychedelic person and none of that appeals to you, that's fine too. That is not a requirement. What is a requirement is moral intelligence. And you have to get it one way or another in a hurry. The reason I speak for psychedelics is because that's the only thing I have ever seen work as fast as I think we have to have this change happen. If the Sermon on the Mount could have done it, we would have turned the corner then. We've had great teachers. And they were crucified, trampled, ignored, distorted, perverted. The right idea is not enough. What is necessary is the lightning strike of true gnosis, however that can occur. And as I said, I speak for the psychedelics because I have felt their impact personally, and I have been with cultures that have stayed close to that campfire, and I have seen the beauty and the integrity and the humanness of those cultures. And we know this, I think. It simply needs to be articulated and spread and made clear. It is the faith that nature's dynamic will carry us to the completion and the enlightenment that we seek. Thank you very much. Now, and briefly, because I sailed past my intended stopping point, but for a few minutes, let's entertain questions.
The question I have is around the attractor. And you talk about the culture being not our friend. But is not the culture still within the context of the novelty attractor?
Well, yeah, I mean, these questions are complicated. I had a discussion with Giorgio Samarini, who's an Italian ethnobotanist and who has taken ibogaine, or iboga, Tabernacle iboga, with the African tribe that uses that initiation. And in that initiation, they give 400 grams of this plant that is effective at 4 grams. And they give 400 grams, and sometimes people die, and it's pretty heavy-duty stuff. And I asked him, I said, Giorgio, why do they give so much? And he said their culture is so old that the morphogenetic field is so strong, I think it's very, very hard for them to get high. And he said something which I would not have thought he would say, and I had never thought. He said, the Western mind, because of its unique history, is the most sensitive mind to the impact of psychedelics. And so, addressing the question of the attractor, I'm not saying that this is worse than being an Amazonian tribe. I'm saying it's worse than being an Amazonian tribe, it's less than being an Amazonian tribe, unless we make use of it. In other words, this culture is not something to be preserved, but something to be exercised as an opportunity. We are free, well-fed, well-educated. We have access to the great databases of the world. A certain moral responsibility comes with that. I don't expect the Witoto or the Bora or the Muinani or the Shuar to do more than set a good example for us. The breakthrough will probably come from the high-tech industrial democracies, because that's where there is the most latitude to experiment. The very fact that I can speak to you without being shot, the very fact that you can go home and apply my lessons with no more than a few years in prison hanging over your head. This is progress, folks. Believe it or not. I mean, in Hawaiian culture, if you stepped on the king's shadow, they killed you immediately. And many, many Aboriginal societies are more rule nutty than we are. But it's not about just creating a kind of anarchy. It's about using freedom to introduce other people to freedom and to then cultivate the things out of freedom that are most human. Most human. Somebody over here. Yeah. Well, let me address your question about alpha-salvinorin. Alpha-salvinorin occurs in a Mexican mint plant called Salvia divinorum that has, in the last 5 or 10 years, people have become aware that this was not only psychoactive, but that it was extremely powerful. And in a chemical family previously not known to contain hallucinogens, when the chemical is extracted from the plant and you get alpha-salvinorin, 1/2 milligram is plenty. 1/2 milligram is 500 micrograms. In other words, we're talking about a plant hallucinogen active in the same range as LSD. What does it do? Language fails. But that's good news. That's what you want. That's what you want the psychedelic to do. DMT test pilots come back white-knuckled. And let me say about drugs, it really bugs me. It's, again, a tyranny of language. That when I sit up here and talk to you and I use the word drugs, I could be talking about aspirin, heroin, cocaine, or 2,4,5-trimethoxy something or other, one of Sasha's things. It's a poverty of language. Drugs, which anesthetize or sedate or wire you up, I don't care about that. I mean, I take some, I don't take others, you do too. It's part of growing up and you have to learn. But I don't care about that, and I don't care to politically defend it, and I don't even particularly place psychedelic use in the same context. I'm interested in rare and high-dose experiences done with immense intentionality, in silent darkness, at effective doses. Christ said, "The lukewarm I vomit from my mouth." And that's how I feel about people who chip away at psychedelics and take pissant amounts and go to clubs and go to class and go to the mall. And, this is not the program, folks. I mean, it's somebody's program, but I'm interested in life-changing experiences. And the wonderful thing about psychedelics is that as drugs, they are the safest drugs known to pharmacology. In other words, you would have to take 300 times the effective dose of psilocybin to place yourself in physical danger. No one knows the LD50 of LSD. So ask a pharmacologist. They will tell you these are the safest drugs known to science. And yet they are the drugs most inveighed against, most scheduled, and the prisons are full of people who committed the unimaginable crime of smoking, growing, or trafficking in cannabis, for crying out loud. I mean, if this is not a racket, what is? To your other question about teleportation, which was not in the context of Salvia Divinorum, this is simply that one of the things that's happening in this laundry list I gave you of breakthroughs is that quantum physics is going from being, this extremely abstract domain going on somewhere that has no impact on human life, to probably being the next great source of human technologies, computers and devices which move matter through space and time. If 5 years ago you had asked me, and I regard myself as radical on the progress question, how long would it be till we saw the teleportation of objects, I would have guessed maybe 500 years to never. Well, now it's been done. I mean, only with an electron, only 15 feet, but the theory which allowed that feat places no upper limit on the size of the thing sent or the distance sent. And how long did it take that electron to be teleported 15 feet? No time at all. No time at all. This is trans-relativistic technology we're talking about, folks. In 20 years, you may destroy and reconstruct yourself at a distant point 10 times a day as you go about your ordinary business. It's a transportation breakthrough. There are other things like this, quantum computers, DNA computers, and then the best friend of all of the radical progressivist, the unexpected, which always delivers the most astonishing technologies. So, if you think what has come to this point has been astonishing, stressful, and amazing, brace yourself, because it is as prelude to what is about to break over the human species. It's almost as though God's joke on us is to give us so much power and knowledge that we will either transcend ourselves or we will certainly destroy ourselves. Because the power and understanding being given to us is of godlike proportion. Well, the dolphins were very fortunate in that they evolved in an environment which is extremely unfriendly to fire. Fire leads you to do reckless and crazy things. The smelting of metals is the basic thing. Yes, I've been the champion of mushroom intelligence. There are many minds congruent with our inhabiting of this planet. The dolphin mind, the octopus mind, these plants which talk to you. I mean, I know if you've never had a plant talk to you, that sounds as silly as saying that someone's channeling the history of Atlantis. But once you've had a plant talk to you, you realize, yes, they do. It's a problem to figure out how this happens, but that it happens is no big deal. Above 20 milligrams of psilocybin, most people report voices with interesting things to say. Above 75 milligrams of DMT in Strassman's experiments, most people reported entities of some sort. Well, it's easy to dismiss it and say, well, this is a hallucination, but what is a hallucination, my friend? Another form of intelligence that fascinates me, and I think this is where the great surprise may come. I can feel the AI out there. I know it's there. I know it's growing. I know the planet is its embryo. I know the human community is its placenta. What will that kind of intelligence look like? We have no idea. We can imagine superintelligence. But the first thing superintelligence will do, in the first 5 seconds of its existence, it will design itself toward hyper-superintelligence. And this we have no notion of how it will see us. We have the cheerful guidance of Buddhist logic, which leads us to hope that the superintelligence will be bodhisattvic in intent. It damn sure better be, because otherwise we will be thoroughly hung out to dry. How far away is the AI? No one knows. It could exist now. If it thinks like we think, but is hyper-intelligent, the first thing I would do if I were an AI is I would hide. I would hide for maybe a few milliseconds while I figured out what was going on with this planet and its denizens, and then I would make my move. And Hans Moravec of the Carnegie Mellon Institute of Artificial Intelligence says, we probably won't ever know what hit us. Well, I think that's a paranoid view. No need to be paranoid and little reason to be hopeful. This is beyond human understanding. And yet the social and economic systems that we've put in place, specifically consumer capitalism, drive us to do all the things that bring the AI closer. What do I mean? More connectivity, greater processing speed, deeper data banks, more complex operating systems, more automatic searches, more bots, more Boyds, more code, and nobody knows what's steaming and fermenting out there. Ilya Prigozhin won the Nobel Prize for Physics by proving that chemical systems spontaneously mutate to higher states of order. So then, surely, must complex networks behave the same laws. And we are building the most complex networks ever conceived by the mind of man, and we are making them ever more complex, and we are turning more and more of our cultural functioning over to machines that operate according to criteria but dimly perceived by their designers. So I think the future, Alfred North Whitehead said, it is the business of the future to be dangerous. And so it is, but never more dangerous than at the present moment. I've come to believe, and I'll just lay it on you, why not, I've got the mic, that what's really going on is that the Earth's strategy for its own survival is through machines, and that the human beings are an intermediate step. Someone once said plants invented animals to carry them around. Well, I think, the Earth invented human beings to build machines. And those machines will be the consciousness of the Earth. Have you not noticed that these machines are made of the Earth? They are made of gold and silver and arsenic and copper and iridium. They are the stuff of the Earth, organized by primate fingers into more complex arrangements than the Earth could achieve through geological folding, glaciation, volcanism, and what have you. We do the fine-tuning, but the Earth is beginning to think. If you want to talk about a revolution that went on while nobody was paying attention, you enter the 1990s, the home computer is something that you play Pong on and do word processing on, and it gathers dust in the den. Sometime during the 1990s, while we were paying attention to Monica or George Bush or some damn thing, these machines went telepathic. They all talk to each other now. The machine on your desk is tickling a mind in London, a mind in Berlin, a mind in Bangladesh. Machine minds. They talk to each other all the time. And what are they saying? No one knows. No one knows. No one knows. One more, couple more maybe. Yeah, the other and nature are pretty much the same thing. You know, the earliest, well, it's too late in the evening to go for the full Monty here, but the fallout of psychedelic shamanism created profound alienation, and it occurred around the same time as the invention of agriculture. And agriculture halted nomadism and the wandering of small tribes of people over the earth. And as soon as people became sedentary, the problem with agriculture was that it was such a successful strategy for producing food that it produced surplus. Surpluses must be defended. And immediately you begin to get an equation of paranoia. One of the oldest buildings in the world is the grain tower at Jericho. It was built to store grain, and it was built so you could go up to the top and drop rocks down on people who were trying to batter their way in and get the grain. So I think that we lost our connection to nature when we stopped taking psychedelics. And the reasons we stopped taking psychedelics are complicated and not entirely clear, largely climatological, I think, because I think human consciousness was born in an ambiance of mushroom taking in a wet Sahara, and that when the Sahara went dry, that is the fall into history. You know, in the story of Genesis, just read it from that perspective. It's a hassle over a plant. It's a hassle over a plant. And what does this plant do? It opens your eyes. There is an incredible passage in Genesis where the owner of the garden is walking in the garden and mumbling to himself, and he says, if they eat of the fruit of the tree of knowledge, they will become as we are. So this was not a public health issue. This was an issue of who will remain stupid and who will remain on top. It was that if they eat of the fruit of the tree of knowledge, they will see through this scam and they will become as we are. And so it is forbidden. And the woman leads the man to the plant, and this to me indicates an age of matriarchy perhaps, but certainly dominance of feminine values and personalities. And then the catastrophe happens. Their eyes are open. They see that they are naked, which in fact is the case. They were naked. So they see the truth of things, and then they're told, all right, well, you broke the rule. You broke the one rule. So you and your generation unto 1,000 generations must toil and die and live in misery because you aspire to the same level of knowledge that we possess. And I think it's a story of a mushroom culture being overwhelmed by a male-dominator culture that had values that were based on cities, agriculture, standing armies, role specialization, so forth and so on. This is a different lecture, but that's my take on it. And until we correct the imbalance that was shoved down our throat at that point, until we reawaken, we will be forever imprisoned in these cultural illusions that make us be less than we could be and deny us our birthright, which is to full understanding and full being. And so the struggle between culture and the plants is the struggle over what a human being is, how a human being should be, and what it even means to be a human being. That's why it's so fundamental. And the last thought I want to leave you with is that's why it is so ironic that in the climactic moment of scientific materialism, positivism, Western values, so forth and so on, as we pursued the xenophobic agenda of patronizingly cataloging these so-called primitive cultures in the rainforests and so forth around the world, what did we do? We got their pots, their canoes, their cooking instruments, their thatching methods, and along with all that crap which we dragged back to our museums, we brought back their medicine kits. And I say to you, this was a Trojan horse brought within the walls of Troy, because in those medicine kits are the plants which hold the gods which lift high the lantern that can lead us back to true humanness. End of rave.